everyone. Welcome to the Sally Allen podcast. As you know, this podcast is used for a platform to people to come and share their stories of resilience. And today I have two special guests, and they are going to share about an event where they will have people sharing their stories of resilience. And I'm really excited about my two guests, two of my favorite people. We have Missy Day, the awesome Missy Day. I don't think anybody in Vegas do not know Missy Day. She's an executive coach, a corporate trainer, a motivational, amazing motivational speaker, and founder of What's Your Story. Missy and I met 5 or 6 years ago, and she literally changed my life. We met through Lori at Table 34. Shout out to Lori. Hey, Lori. So grateful and so thankful for you to bring Missy into my life. And my next favorite person is Michelle Hausbach. Michelle is a repeat on the show. Welcome, Michelle. Michelle is the owner of creative strategist of Hausbach Brand, a branding and marketing company, and she is the, hang on. She's a partner and creative ninja for What's Your Story. So I'm going to give it away to Michelle and Missy. Share with us, what are you sharing with us today?
Well, our main focus is really what's your story, because we have a big event coming up in October 14 and 15 at the Ahern Hotel. And so it's going to be our biggest one yet. And so we're very excited about it. And What's Your Story basically started from the experience I had of telling my story.
Interesting. Wow. Tell us about that, Missy.
I was asked to speak at a Christian women's business lunch, and they asked me to come and speak on leadership. And I just felt like I was supposed to tell my story. And so I called the facilitator and I said, I think I'm being told to tell my story. And I thought she would say no, and she didn't. So I told my story, and just the response back from the women who said, out of all the people in the room, I never would have thought that story would have came from you. And I lived, or I am living that right now. And the interaction that took place between me and the other women was so amazing that I thought there needs to be a place for people to be able to come and share their story, no matter what it is, what they've been through, with no judgment, just open arms, and a place where they feel safe to tell their story. And that's how it started.
I remember you sharing this before, and one of the things that you shared was you were reluctant to share your story at first. You're like, what? No one's going to want to listen to my story at a leadership, seminar. Tell us a little bit about that and how you overcame that hump.
Well, I just thought, when you're living a certain way, you're living your life, basically. You're growing up and you're thinking everybody's growing up the same way, and it's nobody cares. It's like I didn't want to stand up there and people do one of two things, like, oh my God, let's not ever talk to her again. Or, they're like, yeah, what? So what? So I didn't know what the expectation would be. I just knew that I was supposed to share it, and I did. Mm-hmm. And the response was such that I just felt like this needs to have a place. And so I've been giving people space to tell their stories ever since.
I like that a lot. So you're saying all of our stories have value, even though we think it doesn't.
All of them. And I always tell all the speakers, like the first time Michelle shared her story, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you being on a stage. It's about the one person in the audience that's going to experience transformation or change because you were brave enough to stand and tell your story.
Wow. So that's how What's Your Story came about after you told your story.
Right.
Then you had this idea.
Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us more about that.
Well, the first one, I had no idea what I was doing because I was new in my business and I never had, had an event before. And so I got the space and started advertising it. And the first one, we sold out with 45 people. And I was like, huh, this might be a thing.
Uh-huh.
And people were just like, they couldn't believe it, actually, after the first one. People couldn't believe that 5 speakers would get up and share. And Rhonda Taylor, Rhonda's story.
Yeah.
There was, could have heard a pin drop, during her story. And everybody, it was just so great. And immediately after, I had people coming up to me and saying, "When's the next one?" And I had never even thought that far. I just thought, okay, I'm going to have an event and it's going to be the first one, and then we're done.
Well, I can add to that because you invited me to share my story. And I didn't think I have much of a story either. And you haven't heard my story. And when I shared my story and I saw the looks around the room and people were coming up to me and saying, "You need to write a book about this." So that's how my book came out of that What's Your Story that I shared at. So I am a big advocate of What's Your Story.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, your story was brought the room to their knees for sure.
Yeah.
I remember hearing it at one of the lunches we go to, and yeah, just jaw drop. No idea what to say.
Yeah. Well, tell us, what Creative Ninja, tell us your experience with What's Your Story.
Well, I had never heard of an event either where people get up and share their stories, especially, first-time storytellers. And about 5 years ago, Missy put out a call for auditions, essentially. Send me 5 minutes of your story. And I thought, why not? Because I knew I had a little bit of a story, but when I sat and filmed my 5-minute audition, so much came out of me. Wow. I was like, wow, okay. She invited me to speak, and what Missy was saying, the reactions from the crowd afterwards, the people that approached me saying that they felt the same way that I did, that I had provided hope for them because of the situation there, and helped me to not feel crazy because I thought I was the only one. And I was just immediately addicted to What's Your Story.
Yeah.
So I'd say over the course of the next 2 years, Missy and I spoke about taking it big, making it bigger, obviously opening the stage to more speakers and more audience members. And she invited me to be a partner with her. And I said, absolutely. And I take care of all the creative stuff. So the branding and the, back of the house, the website, some of the technical items. That's how I provide my partnership and my ninja skills. And just, kind of jack of all trades, whatever needs to be done.
Cool. So tell us about what's happening this October. Talk to us a little bit about that, what that looks like.
Well, last year we were in Huntington Beach, and my addiction to Huntington Beach, and I really wanted to have it there, and we did, and it was great. I mean, it was in the middle of a pandemic, and it was just a great experience to be at the beach. And so this year we decided to bring it back home and out of the nursing home.
You have to start somewhere.
That served us well for many times.
They had a great auditorium.
They did.
Yes.
That was a great space. It's just unfortunate it was in a nursing home.
Well, that's where I shared my story, so I
Me
love
too.
it.
Yeah.
So it's going to be at the Ahern Hotel, and we've added something new this year. So we're going to have a Friday night event and then the all-day Saturday event. And we're kind of building it up as because the hotel is just so beautiful and they've renovated all their rooms, that we're kind of encouraging people to come, have a staycation, stay in the hotel, have a swim in the saltwater pool. They have a gym, and then just hang out with everybody. And they've got really great restaurants. They have 3. But we're providing all the meals for Friday night, Saturday morning, Saturday lunch. So everybody will be well fed and watered so they can pay attention.
Yeah. Well, are you comfortable giving us a little background, not giving away too much about the speaker and the run of the show?
Sure. We have some amazing speakers this year. A lot of them have just fell in my lap, really, this year. Jeff Barnes, who's been on your show. And we have Dean Smith, who was one of them was Kim Allen connected me, and I could not believe his story. And I just said, you have to be at What's Your Story? And he agreed. And Gary Miracle and Brielle Decker. And we have Dina Barnes is going to be sharing her story for the very first time. And we have
Melissa Ferrer.
She's sharing her story. She's also going to be singing. And then we have some surprises that I'm not going to share.
They're good ones.
Well, that's exciting. I can't wait. I just can't wait. So it starts Friday night and it goes through Sunday. What's happening on Sunday?
Nothing's happening on Sunday. It's just
Okay.
that Saturday, because it's a full packed day and we end at 6, we're just having people have the opportunity to stay over. And if it's kind of like what we did in Huntington Beach, where on Sunday we all just kind of gathered at the coffee shop and, talked to each other and then kind of like said our goodbyes and everything.
I know What's Your Story had an evolution. It started in a nursing home and it had this beautiful evolution where you think God was taking it someplace and then he took it someplace else. For anybody who's listening about this evolution, I know it's so inspiring to me. Do you mind sharing that with us?
Well, the first one was at Event Space, the Beacon Center is where the very first one was. And then from there, then we went to the theater at the nursing home. And then I actually had one in Utah. I had somebody call and ask if I would bring it to Utah, and I did. And then we took it to Huntington Beach, and now we're here. And I've had some people reach out that asking me if I'm going to bring it to California. So it's just kind of like this organic, really. It's an organic experience. But, I think when you try to put a lid on something, it just makes it small. And the reason we put lids on things is because we're uncertain or scared of what's going to happen. So I've just flipped the lid off this year, and it's just like, you know what? Whatever happens, happens.
And things have been moving and happening. We need to make a sign that says, have story, will travel.
Yes.
Oh, I like that a lot.
I like it a lot. Be willing to tell your story. We'll travel and we'll come,
Yeah.
share your story. So what are some of the things that came out when people have shared their stories? Like for me, I ran off and wrote my book and got my coaching business going, right? After I shared my story, I was so encouraged by what people were saying. And it's like, oh my gosh, I really have a story. And then you put me on stage to speak again. So I became a speaker, right? I speak now. And so what are some of the other things you've seen with people sharing their stories that came out of it?
A lot of books. There's been a lot of books that have come out of What's Your Story. Rhonda went on to do her TEDx after What's Your Story. And I think, though, that there's been just so many moments over the years. It's been a lot of, I think this is our 11th What's Your Story this year. And there's been a lot of moments, but I have to say the most one that epic to me was Huntington Beach when Jeff Barnes was in the middle of his speech, because he wasn't really doing a story. It was more like, workshop motivational kind of thing. And just stopped and said, my wife left me yesterday. And it was like, what did he just say?
Yeah, I still have
Jaw drop.
goosebumps. Yeah, I still have goosebumps. You're saying back then and now you're saying that. Yeah.
And talking to him afterwards, again, so he approached me. I think he approached a couple others. But the reason that he did that was he was so inspired by the previous 8 speakers that had gone up to share their stories before him,
Yeah.
that he just felt this overwhelming urge to share it with the crowd. I have goosebumps. Like,
I do
that's
too,
the
yeah.
power of story.
Stories. Yeah. And I remember he didn't know anyone, but David Dendy got up and went and gave him a big hug, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Everyone was crying. It was just such an inspiring event.
Well, and that moment shifted Jeff's life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it truly, I mean, it's very cliche. Oh, it's, transformational or it's life-changing. But in his case, it truly is. I mean, the trajectory of his life is 180 degrees different than it was the day he shared his story.
Wow. Do you want to tell us about some of that what he's doing now?
Well, he quit. He was in higher education for 20 years, and he quit his job and decided he wanted to write a more personal book and be a speaker, a motivational speaker, and started his own business. And that's what he's doing. He's living his best life because he was brave enough to stand up and share an environment full of strangers because he felt like he was safe.
He did. And, one of the quotes he said on my podcast that I'll never forget is that, Sally, I didn't know how to live a day without chaos in my life. And when I said, where you're at now, he said, I'm a work in progress and I understand I don't need to live like that. So that stems from that one day he stood up at What's Your Story and he shared, my wife just left me. Isn't that amazing? Truly, truly amazing. Michelle, how has What's Your Story changed your life?
Oh. It's hard to put a finger on an exact way. Especially being part of it, you get to hear numerous people's stories and see the reactions, like we were just talking with Jeff, and I've seen many others, and it just makes you, it's addictive. I'm addicted to helping people try to share their stories and listening and, creating a safe space, because you see how it can just change people's lives. And I know, like Missy said, that's cliche, but whatever it is, a little piece of you is changed. I think when you hear a story, especially that you can identify with, or an exact situation, there's been numerous speakers that I feel like they were repeating what was in my head because of our similar situations. And just, it's so powerful to know that you're not alone and that there's hope and you have somebody else you can talk to, immediately after the event or during a break. So.
Yeah. Well, I remember when you were on my podcast and we were talking, we looked at each other. I'm like, I'm going through the same thing that you are going through right now. We
Right.
could so relate. And that's the power of sharing stories, because people need to know that they're not alone. There are other people going through the same thing, and we can all, help each other heal. Right? So I'm going to give you to the stage. Tell us everything you want to tell us about What's Your Story. Share.
Well, I don't rank people's stories, because I think that, every person's story is just so unique and individual. But I will say that your story, though, I have to say was, I'm sorry, the only word that comes to mind is tragic. And I'm sorry if that sounds like too much. But I mean, truly, no one could ever come close to your story that I've heard so far. And to watch you, isn't it funny how we get perceptions of people, right, based on the outwardness? And so I always thought, oh, she's like this most together, beautiful little thing. And then you share your story and you're like, what the heck? How did you even live through that? You know what I mean? And so that's why there's so many people that are broken, that are walking around, that I feel when it's their time, it's important to let it go, get it out there, put it on the table, and walk away from it. You know what I mean? So that you can help other people. It's all about serving. I think that's for me, that's what your story is. It's about serving others.
I concur.
Well, it's not just about serving, though. Like, it brings healing. Like, as you're saying that to me, there's all these emotions are just rising up in me. But it's good emotions now. It's not like before it was shame. And, there is so much self-degradation. But now it's like the emotions that are rising, like, I have a voice. I can speak and I can give people hope. And that only came out because you encouraged me to share. So there is that too. And I'll forever be thankful. And one day, Missy Day will host while I share my story. It will host when I can compose myself. Yeah. Well, we will have that and have my story on here. So. There.
One other thing to add too, so obviously there's a speaker lineup, right? And they're there to share their stories. However, if you pay attention when you're having conversations with people, friends, family, whoever it is, we all tell stories. So I've heard, like after the event breaks, whatever it is, the audience members sharing their little mini stories or the quick encapsulated version of it with other attendees or even the speakers, and then friendships have developed, connections have developed. So it is a platform to launch somebody to share their story and conversation that they've never shared with anyone or very few people.
Yeah.
And you never know where it's going to go. Like right now, Jeff he's writing a story. He's writing a book about his story. And we were talking the other day and he said, I never would have dreamed I would be writing a book about his story. And I told him, I said, your story is not only going to be a book, I believe it's going to be like a movie.
I could see that.
Yeah.
You know, and especially for him, he gets it now that, because before he was like, I'm a man, and no man is going to share this kind of a story. And I said, yeah, but what happened to you after your story, when you told your story?
Yeah.
You know, you had two guys come up to you and say, wow, can I relate to where you're at and what you're going through? And I said, nobody's ever alone in their story. There's always people out there that are either have lived it or are going through it, and they become like your accountability partner in a way, you know, to keep you going.
Yeah. Yeah. So where can people get information for What's Your Story?
They can go to www.whatsyourstory.vegas. There is all the information, the speaker lineup. You can purchase tickets there. There is sponsorship information. And we also do have room blocks at a special rate for anyone attending What's Your Story. So you can make a staycation of it or come in to Vegas and stay the weekend.
Awesome. Missy?
We're looking forward to this one. It's going to be something like we've never done before. And the people that have just come forward that want to help, that want to sponsor, that want to be a part has been really cool. And going back to what I said, you know, when you let go of something and you let God handle it and plan it, it turns out so much better than you could ever dream.
Yeah, I was going to tell you to do a takeaway, but I think that's... She dropped the mic right there.
Let it go.
Let it go.
That's right. Let it go.
All right, and you, Michelle, what's a takeaway today for our audience?
I think you have to be open to hearing stories because that will help your own story come to the surface.
Yeah, I agree. Be open to hearing stories because it lets your story come to the surface. I like that. Mm-hmm. See it rising like a phoenix.
Yep. And then you get it out.
Then you get
and
it
let
out.
it go.
You want to sing again?
No. Your audience members will unlike your podcast.
No, you have a good voice. Do your DJ.
Wicca, wicca, wicca.
That's the best DJ impression ever. I forgot where we were, but wait, every time Michelle's on my podcast, she do it. Well, my takeaway today, friends, it's never too late to start living resiliently. And one way you can do that is start sharing your story. When you share your story, it actually brings healing. And it also it's freeing. The more you share, the more you heal, and the more you realize that I don't have to be ashamed. The shame factor is a big one for me. It was shaming to share what I went through. And after I shared, I'm like, I really can go out and share this. So share your story. Find Missy Day on Facebook, social media, and let her know you have a story to share. Find Michelle on there, and they'll get your stories out. I'm sorry I put a plug in. Sorry if people start reaching out to you. And I want to thank you both for coming on the podcast. Any parting words?
We're going to be starting a podcast because going to what you said, we have so many people. I have a long list of people that want to share their story. And so we needed a place to put them because you can't have a big event like every month. So we're going to be starting our What's Your Story podcast. So if you have a story that it's time to share it with the world, just let us know.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. It's so much fun having you guys. And we want to thank our audience. If you like our show, rate, review, and share with your friends. And thanks to Sticky Paw Studio. Thank you, Travis.
You're welcome.